I am Eric Greenberg, Chair of the CA Board of Directors. Please remember that this meeting of the CA Board of Directors is being live streamed. You can find tonight's agenda and background materials on the CA Board's webpage. Links to these documents can also be found in the description section of our YouTube live stream for those watching this meeting there. If you're virtual, please mute your microphones unless speaking. If you're in the room, please ensure that your cell phones are silenced. Raise your hand to speak and I'll record the names in the order which I see them. If you're virtual, please use the chat feature. As we move through the meeting, I will introduce each agenda item. Before a vote's taken, I will restate the motion as well as who motioned and who seconded. If at any point you have trouble hearing me or any other board member, please say so. I will now call the roll. Lakey.
Here.
Dick.
Here.
Brian.
Here.
Janet. Kevin.
Here.
Alan.
Here.
Bill.
Here.
Andy. Ginny.
Here.
Sherry. And I am here.
Eric, I just joined. It's Janet.
What? Oh, Janet joined?
Yes.
Thanks. Can we get her on the screen somehow?
She's there.
Okay.
Correct.
There you go. Hey. We'll now move to the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Lakey, I do notice one point in the agenda that 6D was requested to be removed.
By staff, but it wasn't in a timely fashion, so we included the memo because Howard Hughes removed it.
Yes. So can I get a motion to remove item 6D?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Who seconded it?
Alan.
What?
Which
So you got a
6C, did you say?
6D, the second easement request.
Second.
That was withdrawn by Howard Hughes.
Second.
Are there any objections to removing item 6D from the agenda? Okay, item 6D is removed. Are there any objections to moving the agenda? Okay, the agenda is so moved. We will now move to resident speak out. I'll call you one by one in the order which you signed up. Individuals have 3 minutes to comment. Anyone representing an organization is allowed 5 minutes. Following remarks, the board will have a chance to ask questions. Please mute your microphone if you're not speaking. Okay, our first resident speak out is Christiana Rigby. Christiana?
Did she get home in time?
She may not be home yet.
Yeah.
Oh,
She was just leaving.
We'll circle back.
I'll circle back.
Yeah.
Pat Smith? Pat, are you there? Okay, we'll circle back to Pat also. James Blackwood, Hickory Ridge Village.
Here.
Hey,
Hi. How's everyone doing?
good.
Good, thank you. Good.
Good. So my name's James Blackwood. I'm on the board for the Hickory Ridge Village, and one of the points that I'm taking on is the Sixpence playground tot lot. It's been boarded up for about 2.5 years now. And I think what we're going to do is put forward a vote to have it done by not one of the Game Time Inc. playgrounds, but rather Bears playgrounds. Getting an estimate now. So just wanted to put that out there. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? I'm working with Dennis, I'm working with Brian England, and I'm getting an estimate from Bears Playground right now. The whole idea with this is that a steel structure is more expensive. It doesn't fit well. The residents don't want it. We'd like to have something of wooden construction, even if it doesn't last as long. So the previous CA board voted on this last time, and they rejected our plan, even though there were three options Dennis presented us with, and the residents voted for the most expensive third option, which was out of our budget. I don't fully understand why it was even presented as an option if it wasn't going to get pushed through. So it's only prolonged the time that this place has been boarded up. I mean, again, it's been boarded up for over 2.5 years. And I just think that Columbia Association should at least have honored their workmanship that they did on the playground that they built there previously back in 2013. That's all I have to say. I just want to put it on your guys' radar that this is the direction we're headed. And we'd like to get an estimate and get it to the CA board to vote on for approval, and hopefully have it somewhere within the budget that you guys have allotted for it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we got a couple questions. Brian?
Yeah, James, thanks for coming in and talking about this. Can you give the board a bit better description of the type of playground that you're going to get an estimate for?
Yeah, so it's called bearsplayground.com. They're based out of upstate New York. You can look them up. The one that I think would fit the size is called the 100-acre woods. They're all wooden construction, cedar construction. They have a 10-year warranty on the structural components. And I think that would fit really well, because in the Sixpence tot lot area, it is surrounded 360 degrees by forest. So it's a very fitting location to have that type of tot lot be. I think it would go great there.
Ginny?
Yeah. Thanks, James. I was out there last week looking at some of the new proposals for the stream and erosion control, et cetera, that have been added to the proposal. And I think it's impressive. You have an unusual tot lot. You have a path splitting two of the facilities from the rest of the tot lot, and then you have a stream there. So I think, I don't know if that's what you're talking about too, of combining not only an innovative, creative approach to the tot lot concept, but combining it with watershed, and also with preventing runoff by looking at some of the land there with the master gardeners to perhaps do some pollinated garden or something else on that land that would stop a lot of the flow of the water. So I think it's an interesting, very interesting proposal.
Dick?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I was wondering if there's any place where we can see what you're talking about. Is there a website or some drawings?
Yes. The website for the playground would be bearsplaygrounds.com.
And that's spelled like Smokey the Bear?
Both are plurals.
Bears?
B-E-A-R-S.
Excuse me, Bears, what was the rest of that?
Playgrounds.
Playgrounds. And .com?
.com, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Good evening, Mr. Blackwood. I just heard that you guys are concerned about stormwater runoff off of this playground. I've been through there, and in your opinion, is there any impervious surfaces that we should be concerned about as far as runoff getting into the stream?
You got to talk to Brian England on that one. That's his expertise.
Oh,
Brian?
You want me to answer that question?
we can talk about it outside the meeting. That's
We
fine.
got the answer to that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you for your
I had my hand
testimony.
up and I put myself in the chat.
Alan.
Alan? Oh, Alan?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I want you to take this question in the spirit it's intended, James. I'm very sympathetic. I love the wooden structures. So take this as a devil's advocate question. As I understand it, I don't think I was on the board when this decision was made. The decision was made to go with the metal because they last longer and we wouldn't have to put the money into replacing. So I guess my question to you is why should other residents of Columbia, through their assessment dollars, pay for your playground to be refurbished?
Right, that's a very good question. I understand where you're coming from on that. We've sent a letter to the board addressing all the multitude of points in there, and I encourage you guys to read that letter if you have not already.
Could you summarize a little bit?
I would need to pull the letter up and actually go through the
Never
whole.
mind.
But
The other thing I'd like to say is at some point, you said you've spoken to Dennis. I don't know if Dennis is there or not. I think it's in the back of his head, but I'd love to hear from Dennis what his opinion is on this at this point.
Okay. And the decision to go with the metal structures, that was never voted on. The CA board never voted on that.
That may explain why I don't remember voting on it.
Right. So, I mean, Game Time Inc. has great structures. They have a good warranty. They are much more pricier. I think when we get this estimate from Bears, I think you'll see that it's cheaper, but I understand what you're saying. If it needs to be replaced more frequently, then it's in essence not cheaper. However, the letter we wrote to the CA board from the Hickory Ridge Village Board states things like other villages have main attractions, whereas the Hickory Ridge Village, we don't really have a main attraction. And the other issue is cents on the dollar in terms of how many residents we have versus how much the CA board allocates towards Hickory Ridge, if that makes sense. We are at the bottom end of the, Hickory Ridge is at the bottom end of the chain of dollars per resident that the CA allocates towards us. Again, it's all in that letter. If you want, I can send it to you.
I'm sure I have it. I believe I did read it, and I will read it again. So thank you, James. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Amy Bennett. Amy? Come back to Amy. Next, we have Sharon Boyes from Protect Our Streams. Sharon?
I'm here.
Hey, Sharon.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry. And I think Amy's having technical difficulties. I know she wanted to attend. She said she didn't get her link. I don't know if anybody can send her one or not. Okay. So anyways, good evening and thank you for this opportunity. I also want to thank the Harper's Choice Cares Group for their ongoing commitment to creating a buffer along the road at Hesperus Drive in the stream corridor. The wildflowers are a welcome addition to the vegetation that has taken over the area. Unfortunately, wildflowers and saplings do not provide the beneficial ecological services that the decades-old mature woodland wetland forest did. It's wonderful to see the community getting involved in stewarding a more positive outcome for Longfellow, but it should have never been needed. Over the past several meetings, I've discussed an alternative to stream restorations, which call for far greater community involvement in the micro watershed to address stormwater runoff. We need to have techniques in place that collect, filter, cool, and slow stormwater runoff before it enters our streams. We need to address the problem with Lake Elkhorn, where it begins at Route 108. We need to assess the street outfalls that blast unmitigated runoff into the stream. We need our volunteers to focus on removing the invasive species in our stream corridors and open spaces. We do not need to continue to create even more acreage for them to be responsible for. They obviously can't keep up with what they have now. We need to to plant native species in our riparian zones and oak and poplar trees amongst our remaining fragments of forest and stream corridors, not remove them. We need to expand these fragile remaining critical ecosystems. There should be a joint effort between the residents, the Columbia Association, the county, and the state. There could even be one contractor, such as WSSI, to oversee the project for obligatory MS4 credits if required. But we must have time to talk about this and not after the permit has been approved. I don't know where that comes from. We've not seen that in writing. I'm asking you to please reconsider this proposal before it is too late. With my remaining time, I would like to show you some of my concerns about what has become of the stream and open space that we pay to maintain in Longfellow. Please give me a 1-minute warning, and thanks again for this opportunity tonight. You may have seen these plants behind me. I'm 5'4". I'll see if the camera will come with me. These are on the floor in my kitchen. These are grasses that are well over 5 feet tall. This is the majority of the vegetation in our area where children used to play. Obviously, they don't want to go through there anymore. It's very difficult to navigate with all the buried debris underneath. This is algae. Right now, Centennial Lake is closed due to blue-green algae. This is not something that we had, I'm trying to get to the camera, not something we had in our stream before. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I would love to show it to you in person. This, I am told, is a native aquatic species. It's very grassy, and these things are smothering things in our stream. And I was told by MDE that if I see mats of this floating in the stream, that I should contact them for testing. And of course, this is all stuff, anything in the stream will head downstream to Wild Lake. This is sediment. $2.2 million we spend of our tax-paying dollars to remove sediment in the stream.
You have 1 minute left.
Yet you can, thank you. You can find banks of this everywhere since our stream restoration. And finally, I have a couple of silt and sediment covered rocks, but I'd rather show you the water quality of our stream. I would have filtered this stream that starts as a spring for backpacking or an emergency if needed, and this came from the oxygenated part. So stream restorations don't mitigate runoff, road salt, pet waste, fertilizer, road oils, or silt and sediment. They don't improve the water quality. They're accelerating the impacts of climate change, and they are the antithesis of Columbia. Antithesis of Columbia. I implore you to reconsider this current proposal. It would be a travesty for it to move forward as last presented. Please stand with the 16 elected officials, many well-respected environmental organizations, me, and many Columbia residents in opposing this project and protect our streams and forests. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Ryan.
Sharon, thank you really very much for all the work you do. I just want to say thank you for that. You're really a great advocate for the community. Thanks for your point of view.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any
It
further?
means a lot to me. The community means everything to me, and as you know, this I've been here since I was 5 years old, and I think that our wooded pathways and forests are literally world renowned. I've come home with people on the airport shuttle, and there's books written about them. They've been written up in, the New Yorker magazine, and I just feel it's our identity, and we really need to do the best that we can to work with what we have, and I think we can if we're given the time. I think we could do something that will work out for everybody.
Thank you. Any further questions?
I have my hand up and put my name in the chat.
Alan.
Hi, Sharon. Two questions. You mentioned, I may have just missed it. You said we have not had that in writing, and I wasn't sure what that referred to.
Oh, thank you. We have not had in writing that the contractor will include the community in the plans and the public comments. They have said this, and they've been given a lot of credit for volunteering to do that. But that's exactly what they're doing. It is just a voluntary thing for them to have meetings in each of the reaches. And once the project has been permitted, they can say that, but they're not required to do that. So I think we'd feel a lot more comfortable if we really had that, you know, in writing. And the other thing I'd like to mention is we already were not happy with the plan that they had presented. And it didn't seem like they were listening to some of our major concerns. Now, I am happy to say, and I do need to say, that I have heard, you know, that they are going to work to protect the beach forest. And I want to give a lot of credit for that. I think that that's wonderful that that's been acknowledged. And I appreciate everybody who worked to make that happen. I do want to point out, though, that as we've seen in Longfellow, that downstream from where any restoration work suffers greatly. And so my concern is, how far up from the beach forest would they plan on stopping their work so that the beach forest didn't suddenly suffer this, you know, great impact from their work? I also know there's been concerns about just that entire section of stream, and I'm hoping that maybe we can come up with a good compromise to still make improvements to the watershed up there, but without removing, you know, any of the forest.
Great. Second question should be a yes or no. I think I mentioned this last time, that John McCoy said he was going to reach out to you. Have you spoken to John in the last few weeks?
I've not heard from John McCoy.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, and thanks to the board for all of your work and time and consideration on this too. And thanks again to everybody who took walks with me. I really appreciate your time and interest.
You're welcome. Next, we have Jayla Males. Jayla? No, Jayla. I'll circle back to Christiana. Christiana Rigby, are you there?
I am. I'm here, virtually. Thank you. So I mentioned this to Ginny and a couple other folks, but it really has been a tough few years with the pandemic and just everything. And I'm here today really not in my professional role, but just in my personal role as a resident and Columbia superfan, I guess you could say. I know some of you might not know my background, so I'll give a little history, because tonight I really want to use my resident speak out time to just express my gratitude for you, for your service, and for CA. My parents moved to Owen Brown in the 70s, and then they later moved to McGill's Common. And my sister and I were both born here, raised, returned, and now we're raising our own families here as well. So this is a really special community to us. And CA has really helped me personally get through this pandemic and sort of get back to full human life experience. I want to start with a shout out to Liz Hensey and Ms. Castle over at the Art Center. I signed up for just a one-off class, had so much fun. I signed up for another one with my mom. And everyone in that class had so much fun doing this acrylic flow that we asked if we could have a longer class. And Liz and Ms. Castle, they worked together and they did a whole additional 3-series class. And they did another one after that. And I think it's great that that they were so responsive to us, that they saw how much fun we were having, that there was interest, and that they turned around and made it happen. That is unusual to have that kind of fast turnaround to meet that resident need. And so I really do appreciate it. And I know you have a board retreat coming up, so it's actually kind of handy that I'm at home, because these are some of the things that you can create in this class and you can't get it wrong. So it is very fun. So I highly recommend you maybe reach out and include that as part of your retreat, because it's a great way to spend time just connecting and enjoying, each other's company, which I think can be hard when you're often talking about issues that people feel really passionate about. This was my first year having both kids on my neighborhood swim team. Last year, my daughter did it. This year, my son did. After time trials, there was not a single time that he did not panic at getting in the water. And the coaches and the older team members were so supportive of him. He's just 5, and they really helped him through the anxiety of that experience. And he was so thrilled to be part of the team, and it was just a really wonderful experience. And that neighborhood swim team is so much more than just an aquatics program, as I think most of you know, but it really is part of the heartbeat of our community, especially over in Kings Contrivance where I live. It is such an important community amenity, and I'm so grateful that we've had the opportunity to experience it. I had also hoped to shout out the Coral Reef, but we were not able to attend this year because we had planned to go on Sunday. And I know that there were some timing issues, but I did go in 2019, and it was a magical experience that sparked so many exciting conversations with my kids, and I was very excited to go again this year, but hopefully it'll be back next year, and you guys will have an opportunity to work out some of the challenges in scheduling. And one minute, or am I done?
Yeah, and thank you. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Jenny?
Yeah. Christiana, I went on Saturday, and it was fantastic. Luckily, we got a space right in the parking lot there because other people were parked like 5 blocks away. So
Yes.
it is a shame that it was canceled on Sunday because it's very, very popular.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Any questions for the people virtual? Thank you for your testimony.
Absolutely. And I will follow up with the positive experiences I didn't get to share, specifically Kyle from Open Space. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Next we have Pat Smith. Is Pat Smith on? Okay. Is Amy Bennett on? Jayla Mills? I think that concludes resident speak out.
Okay.
So that concludes our resident speak out for tonight's meeting. To limit interruptions during board discussion and voting, all members of the general public will now be returned to the audience. This means you will no longer be able to show your camera or unmute your audio, but you're more than welcome to stay on as an attendee and watch the remainder of the meeting. You can also watch a live stream on the CA live stream YouTube page. Thank you so much for your participation tonight. I will now take a moment to allow our staff to make this transition. Yeah, I need to announce this.
Why isn't it?
Oh, it's here. I missed it. Next we have announcement of closed and special meetings that were held. On Monday, July 11th, there was a meeting of the CA Board of Directors Architectural Resource Committee, closed meeting. The motion to close was 4-0-0. On July 14th, there's a meeting of the Board of Directors Risk Management meeting on July 14th. And on July 20th, there was a meeting of the Audit Committee of the Board of Directors. Next, I'll move on to the consent agenda. The approval of the minutes from the June 23rd, 2022 meeting, and the approval of the appointments to the Climate Change and Sustainability Advisory Committee. Next, we move on to board votes. 6A is the board schedule for FY 2024. Can we display the board schedule online? Can I get a motion to approve the board schedule, item 6A?
Yes,
Brian moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ginny, second. Do we have any discussion on the board schedule?
Well, just one.
Ginny?
I'm wondering if the board could see the survey before it goes out, the community and village survey. That's one of the first things that'll occur.
That's the first thing on the agenda. That's number one. Oh, you're talking about the survey versus the survey results.
I'm talking about the schedule, engagement process. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's number one.
Budget schedule.
Yeah, that's the first.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'm just saying, is there any chance we could see this survey in advance?
I was just wondering, what would be the purpose of seeing the survey?
I just want to know what it says.
Well,
I mean, I don't know, are there any questions we might have, or any suggestions, or anything like that, or,
are we talking about amending the survey, or?
I don't know, or any feedback from the board, or anything like that? Not officially, not that we need a board meeting, but I don't know. I guess we just take it? Okay,
Any further?
all right.
Any further discussion on the schedule?
Nope.
So we got a motion by
Brian?
Brian and a second by
Me.
Ginny to approve the schedule. I'll call the roll. Dick?
Yeah.
Brian?
yes.
Janet? Janet?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
And I'm yes. Motion passes. Second, we have board goals and objectives, which is item 6B in the packet. Can I get a motion to approve the board goals and objectives as stated in 6B?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Who's that?
Kevin?
Kevin? Do we have any discussion on the board goals? Dick?
Yes. In goal improve board relations, we have the fourth bullet, provide continuous education. That seemed to me to be something that would be under the, I'm just wondering if that's a CEO president's responsibility or whether that's the board's responsibility. And inform the board in a timely manner. That should probably go under improve communication and community engagement.
So are you making a motion to strike bullet 4 and move bullet 5 to goal 4?
Yes, I am, and I have another thing also.
We'll take them in order.
Okay, one at a time.
So I got a motion by Dick to strike bullet 4 of goal 1 and move bullet 5 to goal 4.
Can we take each bullet separately, or?
Well, we'll take each amendment separately.
Exactly.
We'll take each amendment separately. Do I have a second for Dick's motion, Dick's amendment?
I'll second.
Can you please restate that?
Brian states it. I will restate the amendment. So Dick moved and Brian seconded to move bullet 4 in goal 1, provide continuous education for the board on issues and topics important to ensure effective evidence-based governing leadership. So the move was to strike that bullet and then move bullet 5, inform the board in a timely manner of significant outreach to community stakeholders, to goal 4, which is improved communication and community engagement. So that's the amendment on the table. Do you have any discussion on it? Jenny?
Yeah, on the last bullet, inform the board in a timely manner of significant outreach to community stakeholders. I think that's extremely important, and that would go under improving board relations and communications with the president, with the board. That's just so important that we really be informed in the timely manner, not after the fact. So I don't see that as community engagement. I really see that as a responsibility of the board needs to know, and they need to know in a timely way, not after the fact when some contract's been signed or something's been signed, and then we hear about it. So we have absolutely no input at all. Nor does the public, but that's, so I have a problem with that. The other one, I'm not sure I see it as a big issue or a problem because it would be the advice of the staff as to any ideas they have that I'd certainly love to hear in terms of continuous education. It doesn't stop the board from also doing its thing, but it seems like we could benefit.
Dick?
Well, I am not striking inform the board in a timely manner. I'm just putting it in a different category. I'm putting it down as part of improved communications and community engagement.
No, I understand that.
Which I think is where it belongs.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You're not striking it. I'm saying I think it belongs under board relations and communications that the president would have with the board. The other is a whole different thing. So we're just disagreeing on the last bullet, that's all.
Lakey?
I just have a question because, I mean, what I have in the packet says inform the board in a timely manner of significant outreach to community stakeholders. And Jenny just used as an example, if the president executed contracts and informed the board after the fact, they might want to have input. So I'm not quite sure. I'm reading this as significant outreach to community stakeholders would not be a contract. So I'm a little confused now. Do I have the right version? And I'm not understanding that example.
I mean, that's the text I've got in front of me.
Okay.
Any further questions?
I have my hand up and have my
Alan?
in the text.
You just speak up because
Thank you.
it's hard to see the hands on virtual from here.
So I also have it in the chat as you requested, so I don't know what else to do. Yeah, I picked up the same thing that Lakey just picked up, so I think I want to make sure we're talking about one thing and not multiple things. I'm not clear. First, I agree with Ginny that informing the board of the significant outreach is about improving board relations. It's not about communicating and it's not about improving communication and community engagement. So I think it does belong there. And I guess I would like to hear from you, Lakey, about, because I heard you, Dick, started as a question. You said, I'm not sure that it's the president's job to provide board education. And I'm not sure it isn't. I'd like to hear some discussion on that. And we had a thing just the other day, and that was provided by the president, as far as I know. That seemed to me perfectly appropriate. So I guess I'm not sure why we'd want to strike that unless, Lakey, you were to say that you didn't think that was part of under your purview.
Any further questions or follow-up? There being none, can I call the question? On voting for Dick's Amendment 2A, which is to strike bullet 4 in goal 1 and move bullet 5 from goal 1 to goal 4. Dick?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Kevin? Kevin?
Sorry, on mute. Yes.
Alan?
No.
Bill?
Yes.
Ginny?
No.
And I am a no. The amendment passes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 3. Do you have any further discussion? Dick?
Yes,
Yes,
I'd like to add one
What?
bullet to,
Was there someone, did someone else want to get in the queue? Janet. I'll get to Janet, then I'll go back to you. Janet?
I think we've had a bit of feedback on the school redistricting. I'd like to propose that we strike that bullet point about advocating for school redistricting. I think that gets very convoluted among villages, and it is probably not in CA's best interest to try to determine what the best path forward is for that.
So you got a motion by Janet to strike under item 3 under goal 3. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Bill seconds it. Do you have any discussion?
I'd like to say something.
Bill?
This goal actually was something that I was looking to include in the president's goals for this year. And I've heard a lot of feedback from some people. I think this is an important thing to discuss, and the board should continue to pursue this. But I don't think that the president should be evaluated on it. The number of middle schools and elementary schools that have been built in Columbia since 1980 is 0. There hasn't been a lot of things going on. There are people moving, or there are students being moved all over the county. And if we're we pretend to be a walkable community, we're still sending a lot of kids on school buses, and I think a bit of it is unnecessary. I think that we should be supporting and working with, rowing in the same direction as villages, but I don't think the village has been able to affect the change that has been necessary over the years. And I think we ought to engage the school system, but I don't think we should evaluate the president on this. So that's my 2 cents.
Any further discussion?
I've got my name in the chat.
Alan?
Yeah, I guess, Bill, what you just said persuaded me. The purpose for me of that goal was to support neighborhood schools. It wasn't to support any particular redistricting plan, but rather to support the Columbia notion of walkable neighborhood schools. But I'm okay removing it for the reason you gave.
Any further discussion? So I do actually have one question for Janet. I know that your amendment was concerned about redistricting, but what about, the question I have for you is, what about just general educational issues affecting Columbia?
I guess I agree with Bill's point about, I think it's important to discuss, but I'm just really not sure that that is something that the president should be evaluated on.
Okay. Fair enough. I will call the question on striking item 3 from goal 3, which is the educational issues affecting Columbia, including school redistricting.
It may be unanimous.
I'll call a roll. Dick?
yes.
Brian?
No.
Janet?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. The motion passes 7-1.
Got about 90 seconds.
Got it. Any further, Dick?
Yes, I move that we add one bullet under improved board relations and communications. I'd like to have a bullet that reads, meet regularly with the board chair and vice chair at the times, dates scheduled by the board chair.
Do I have a second to add each? Could you specify regularly?
Regularly?
Regularly. We have a motion by Dick to require that the president CEO meet regularly with the board chair as requested by the chair. Is that the motion?
Scheduled by the chair.
Scheduled by the chair. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Brian seconds it. So Dick moves. Brian seconds. Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, can you define regularly?
I left it to the board chair's discussion.
And what about the president's availability? I
Well,
mean, I think it's important to understand what a general consensus is on regularly, because if it's twice a week, that might be excessive.
For the record, I do not have the bandwidth to meet twice a week. I actually do have another job. But
I think it remains that it should be at least, roughly quantified,
yeah.
especially
Jenny?
if it's something that's going to be measured.
Okay.
Yeah,
Jenny?
I think it can be measured. I think it should be what the chair requested a while ago is twice a month, and then if there's some emergency as needed, but definitely scheduled twice a month, as opposed to once a month or less that was offered.
So you're going to offer a friendly amendment to change regularly to twice a month?
And
As requested.
in the case, yeah, meet twice a month, and if needed, an additional, meeting. But basically, it's to answer Janet's question, I think twice a month is more than reasonable. And they're an-hour meetings. It's not like a half a day or anything. And then as needed, if that would be understood as, some crisis, which I hope never occurs. But if it does, you don't just say, I got to wait 2 weeks.
Dick, do you accept that friendly amendment?
Sure.
Okay, so the motion is now to meet with, the motion is now to add a goal, to goal 1, add an objective to meet regularly with the chair twice a month as scheduled by the chair. Brian?
And
Bill.
additional meetings if needed.
Bill?
It's okay. It's one syllable B names. We're getting close. I just wanted to say, we've been at these goals for a while, and I was more than happy to entertain rephrasing some of these, reordering, deleting any or removing, adding goals, new goals at this time, I'm not really thrilled with. And I just wanted to state that on the record that I just think that we had a while to do this. We came out with a copy that we could all at least take a look at in this final go at. I don't think it's proper to add stuff at this late time.
For point of information, this would not be adding a goal, it would be adding an objective to a goal.
Okay, well, adding an objective to a goal, you are correct, and I think that it's a little late in the game to do that. That's my own 2 cents.
And I'd like to say 100% to that as well.
Lakey?
I was not asked about adding this, and Jenny just made a reference that I had indicated before, so I will state it so everyone can hear what I actually said, which is it was requested by the chair to meet biweekly and in times of crisis, as Jenny indicated. I indicated that this board meets every 2 weeks. In the weeks that we do not meet, staff is spending all of that time getting ready to post a packet that we post the Friday before the week that we meet. So to have 2 board meetings a month, to prepare for those board meetings, to work with senior staff, to have the posting of the packets, and then to be prepared to present is actually quite a significant amount of time that the president and my team puts towards prepping for board meetings. I indicated, as did Susan Krabby, the senior vice president and CFO, who has been at Columbia Association for over 20 years, that a monthly meeting would be completely adequate to cover anything from the staff side that we might need to convey. Because I have an ability to use phone calls and emails if I did have a crisis. And I did commit to you, Mr. Chair, that if there was a crisis that I really needed the chair's input and the vice chair's input, I will absolutely contact you. Outside of that, a monthly meeting seems more than adequate in addition to the 2 monthly meetings we have as an entire group, in addition to all of the preparation that requires these very lengthy meetings to have. In addition, so far this fiscal year, with, I believe, the exception of this evening, the agendas have continued to change with short notice, which requires even more time for staff to prepare. So I will put forward clearly for everyone to hear that bi-weekly not only do I not agree is needed, but I think could actually become burdensome, because at least where the language is defined right now is that it would be twice a month plus as needed, to be determined by the schedule of the board chair. So I too have a significant job outside of board relations, and to be able to address that could become problematic to achieve that goal for the board to evaluate me on. So that's my position.
Alan?
Thank you. I'd be happy to set something at the chair and president's mutual agreement in terms of scheduling. I wish Andy was here, but Dick, you've been co-chair, and Janet, you've been chair, and Ginny, you've been co-chair. What's been the history on this? We've had this practice of the chair and vice chair, I didn't mean co-chair, I meant vice chair, meeting with the president on a regular basis. What's been the cadence in the past?
When Lakey was new, we initially met twice a month, and then we determined that that was too often. It was
How
unnecessary.
about with Milton?
I've never met Milton.
Dick?
Yes. When Milton was president, he found time twice a month to meet with the board chair and vice chair. And those were very useful meetings. It was a chance to get some background, to get some understandings. It was a casual, private meeting, and it was very useful.
Lakey?
Susan Krabby is not here this evening because she's on vacation, but I'm going to repeat what she said in the last chair-president meeting in which the vice chair and Susan Krabby attended. She indicated that the meetings were monthly, and she also indicated that they were not useful by all the people that participated in them.
Dick?
When we met with Milton, Susan was not present, so I don't know how she can tell you whether the meetings were helpful or not. It was Andy and me, and we met with Milton. We had a good chat. It was very helpful, and it helped us understand where he was coming from on some issues. That sometimes there was a little background information that helped us get our goals in alignment. It's not a terrible burden to meet with the board, who you report to.
I do not believe that is what I said.
Ginny?
Okay, it sounds like this is a real burden, but I think if you look at it, we're talking about 2 hours a month. And actually, I think our first meeting ended 10 minutes earlier, and our second meeting ended 15 minutes earlier. So it was 50 minutes and 45 minutes. It's not like some of you may be thinking when you're listening to this, we're talking about 3-hour meetings or something like that. That's not it. And it's all business. You get down to whatever the issue is, and that's it. So I don't think that's asking too much of the president and CEO to meet with whomever the chair is and the vice chair 2 hours a month to discuss business. It should develop a communication that might be very helpful is the goal. If it doesn't, at least it's a try. So that's what it's about. It's not a burden, in my opinion. I know everybody's busy, but good grief, 2 hours a month?
Any further comments or questions on this amendment?
Move the question.
I will just say one thing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we did have a board training last week, and one of the things that came up at the board training, and a theme that was over and over and over, was improving communications. And I think anything that we can do to at least try to take a step in that direction to improve communications, whether it's amongst the board, among staff, between the board and staff, I think is a step in the right direction. So I think being able to have more open, more frequent communications, given that that was a theme at our board training, is important. I will now call the question. Dick?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Janet?
No.
Kevin?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Bill?
No.
Ginny?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Motion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion passes 6-2. Any further questions on this topic? Can I get I'll call the question on approving the goals itself. So I got a motion with 3 amendments to approve the goals themselves. The motion was made by Ginny, second by Kevin, to approve the goals and objectives. We have 3, we actually have,
Okay,
yeah, we have 3,
motion then.
and we have 3 amendments to it that all passed. One was to strike bullet 4 in goal 1 and moving bullet 5 in goal 1 to goal 4. The second was strike item 3 in goal 3. And the third was to add a bullet to goal 1 for the chair to meet with the CEO president twice a month.
And when needed.
And when needed at the,
I believe the way it was passed was, and the chair gets to choose the schedule.
at the chair's
That's my note.
at the chair's request, yes.
Yeah.
That's not what I have.
So I will call the question. Dick?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Janet?
No.
Kevin?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Bill?
No.
Ginny?
Yes.
I'm a yes. The goal is passed 6-2.
Okay.
Next, we have item 6C, easement requests. So we have 3 easement requests. They include the private path easement, the multi-use pathway easement, and the public fire hydrant, and water and utility easement related to the development of the HRD property adjacent to CA open space. Can I get a motion to approve the 3 easements? Dick moves.
Second.
Ginny seconds. Any discussion? No discussion. I will call the question. Dick?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. The motion passes 8-0. 6D is removed. We have 6E. The Lake Elkhorn Stream Restoration and Board Subcommittee recommendations. Brian?
Okay, thank you. Just to recap, on the Land Use Committee, we've been looking at the easements, 6B Tot Lot, Columbia Development in general, and of course the stream recommendations. And one of the things we'd like to do is to, we put forward 2 motions. And what the first motion is this: I move that the President arrange a board work session meeting with WSSI during August, so the board can receive an update on the progress of compliance with the 11 pages of issues from the MDE related to the Elkhorn stream restoration.
So we have a motion by Brian for the President to arrange for a WSSI meeting in August. Do I have a second?
I mean, that's not what's in the packet. That's not what we're discussing. That, he's reading things that are not in the packet. Chair, Mr. Chair.
Right now, we don't even have, right now, we don't even have a
responsibility.
second for this.
Your responsibility to manage the meeting.
Right now, we don't even have a second for this. Do we have a second for this? There's no second for the
Well,
motion.
second for discussion, yeah.
Okay, now we've got a second. Now. So
Janet's like,
Janet.
I'd like to table this conversation and not schedule work sessions in August. I think to Lakey's point and to the point every single meeting is that we have an agenda, and when we why do we have an agenda, I think is my question, because every time people bring new information to the table. I mean, this is not doing a service to our community, and it is not doing a service to this board, because we cannot have adequate time to prepare. What's included in the packet is outdated, so that should have been updated. But at the very least, if we're going to do a work session, we should talk about what's a convenient time, and it shouldn't be sprung on the board when it's not even on the agenda.
Do I have a second to table? Do I have a second? So Janet moved to table. Do I have a second to table?
Sure.
I'm not sure a motion to table requires a second. I may be wrong about that.
I think it does, but Dick seconded the motion to table, so I will just go with that, and I'll look it up in my Robert's rules when I get home. So we have a motion by Janet, a second by Dick to table. Any discussion on tabling?
Alan's hand is up.
Whose hand?
Alan.
Alan? Do
No.
you have any comments on tabling?
No.
No comments. Any further comments? Any discussion on tabling this motion? Okay, I will take a roll call on tabling the motion. Dick?
Yeah.
Brian?
No.
Janet?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Ginny?
No.
And I am no. The motion failed. The motion passes to table. This motion.
4-4, isn't it? What was Kevin's vote?
I got 5 here.
Kevin, what was your vote?
He voted yes. I got 5.
Yes.
Yes.
can't hear him.
He voted yes.
He did?
I got 5-3. The motion's tabled.
Okay.
Brian, any further comments?
Yeah, well, I'd like to follow up on the second motion.
Okay.
I mean, these motions have been prompted by the fact that we have not had received the information yet from that we requested. We've asked for a timeline. And so therefore, that's why I brought these
Flow
motions.
chart.
What? There's no motion. Do you have a motion?
Yes, my motion is that I move that the President instructs staff to communicate with the Land Use Ad Hoc Committee on all aspects of the restoration and provide the flow chart.
So this would be item 2 on.
Second.
This would be item 2 on 6E. So Bill moves. Ginny seconds. Do I have any discussion?
Point of order.
Yes,
This
discussion.
motion's been tabled. There needs to be a motion to take it off the table or put
No,
it
no.
back on the
This
table.
is a different motion. So this is
The
another.
point,
So this is what happened. Brian made a motion to have a meeting with WSSI. That motion was tabled. Brian made a second motion to have a flow chart produced. This is actually in item 2 in 6E. So this is a separate motion that Brian made, Ginny seconded.
Can I discuss it?
So does that answer your question?
My understanding was that the item 6 echo on the agenda was being tabled.
No, it was the motion.
That's
So-
what I thought.
So
The
Janet
motion was
moved to
on the
table the motion, not the agenda item.
Yeah, motion was the thing on the table.
Yes, so the
Can I-
motion
I
was
stand
tabled.
corrected.
The motion was tabled, not the entire agenda item.
Can I discuss
Janet,
this?
Janet? I saw Janet's hand first. And I'll-
yeah, so I think the point is the subcommittee came back with a recommendation that the board has never voted on.
Exactly.
And so the board needs to vote on it, which is why I'm saying the dates in the resolution or in the whatever recommendation are outdated because they're in the past. So if we want a flow chart, then it has to be given a new deadline and it has to be voted on by the board.
So are you making an amendment to change obviously the July 7th deadline is unfeasible unless you have a time machine, but are you making an amendment to change that date?
Yeah, I'll make an amendment to change it to August the 7th.
Oh,
Well,
any further comments, Janet?
I have.
I just, I mean, I think we need to have a broader, more holistic view at our subcommittee efforts and clarification around, one, the process, two, the timeline, and three, what the outputs are that are expected so that we can start to manage this, because I think so far the subcommittees have sort of rambled, and we've not gotten a lot of concrete information. This is the most concrete information I think we've seen out of any subcommittee. However, we can't vote on something that has dates in the past because that doesn't make any sense. So I'm not proposing an amendment. I'm just saying that this can't be voted on. It's on our agenda for a vote. So clearly somebody has to propose a realistic timeline for asking for these things that we can then get behind.
Ellen?
I just support everything, almost everything Janet just said. I think we need to have that discussion. I think we need to have I would have preferred a little bit of discussion before jumping into motions here, so we get a little context of what we're talking about. But I would like us to move forward with this.
Lakey?
So I'm going to read directly from an email that I sent to Eric Greenberg, the board chair, on June 22nd, in response to an email that Eric sent forwarding what is included in this packet, where he indicated, and the whole board was copied, I've received the enclosed report. Based on this report, I'm requesting that you do these things. And I responded and explained very much what's just been brought up, that from a process perspective, from a board subcommittee is formed and develops recommendations, the subcommittee needs to bring those back to the full board for discussion, review, and action for a variety of reasons: agreement or modifications on the recommendations by the full group, having interface with staff to determine what is feasible, appropriate, and recommended from an operational perspective, consensus on what is important to spend organizational resources on, in this case staff time, and providing communication to the community that this item is being discussed so they can be aware of what the board is taking action on, especially when directing organizational resources. For this reason, we believe the subcommittee report needs to be placed on an upcoming board agenda to allow both public notice as well as time for staff to formulate a response. I further noted that the board subcommittee recommendations are, in essence, all of them directing staff efforts. And on June 9th, in a board meeting, it was indicated that the board subcommittee would put in the effort and that staff's only role, which I did commit to, would be to gather the relevant files in one place and post on the shared drive, which I did on June 22nd. So from a process perspective, I did explain this to the chair, and this is the information we had from the subcommittee to put into this packet. So we cannot create board information as staff. So that is why this appears in here. Brian England has approached me in a public meeting, not in a constructive manner, asking me why I'm ignoring him and not answering about the flow chart. And the reason is because, Mr. Chair, I answered to you and I indicated what the process needed to be. And I made an assumption, which has become clear, that that was not communicated to the rest of the board. And so I'm now sitting here and it's appearing, as Brian just indicated, that I'm not being responsive as CA staff, and that is not accurate.
So I think this illustrates why we definitely need to meet more frequently between the CEO and the chair so we can iron these things out. Ginny?
Yeah, there was discussion about the flow chart, and I think we called it a timeline, and somebody said it should be changed to a flow chart at the last board meeting, and I was under the impression that it could be accomplished, and I remember saying any project manager should have had that done before you even start a project. You need to know what your deliverables are and the timeline, who's involved, so you could listen to this on YouTube. It's the same speech I gave before. So I don't understand why there's a problem having that appear on the website too. And the reason that's important is it gives people an opportunity to really see when and if they can get involved in a meaningful way. And not to have that there raises suspicion about something's happening and I'm going to miss an opportunity to be involved. And we don't want that, even the appearance of that. So I don't understand the problem with putting up your timeline or flow chart for what task you have already undertaken and will be undertaking. You should have that done. It should be a press of a button, and it's on there. I'm missing the point completely. I don't think it's a big undertaking, and correct me.
Alan?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I had a little different view of the flow chart, that it wasn't just what staff had done. It was a flow chart of the process by which this steam restoration project is going to get done, which would include things from WSSI, things from the Maryland Department of Environment, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, dates would be few and far between, because things are more like, first this has to happen, following that, then this has to happen. But I was under the impression, actually, it wasn't even last meeting, but the meeting before that we discussed it, that along with the documents being in one place, that staff had agreed to providing such a flow chart. I may be wrong about that, but that was my understanding.
Yeah, correct. I did use the word partners, Alan. That's what I meant by other organizations, or what their responsibility would be too.
The other point for me is that the documents right now, as I understand it, are only accessible by the board, and I believe the request was that they be in a place that are accessible by the public, so they can see all the relevant documents as well.
Yes.
Lakey?
I just wanted to clearly state that nothing in my comments said that we would not prepare the flow chart. We came to this meeting this evening ready to discuss the timeline it would take staff effort to create the flow chart.
Right.
What I just discussed was the process of how a subcommittee's recommendation comes back to the board so that they vote, so that there's an allocation of staff resources determined by the full board. That was all my comments were about.
What's the timeline that you'd estimate for creating the flow chart?
So I discussed with staff, and I heard some impressions about what the effort would take, and it is more substantive than that. Going off of what was included in the subcommittee's request, where they wanted multiple organizations indicated, and we do need to do that not just as CA staff, but in concert with some other organizations, because again, we can't produce a calendar, we can produce kind of where the steps in the process are. We can have that ready by the next board meeting in September is what I discussed with staff, which I believe is September 8th, because we have not started on it because we were waiting for it to come back to the board to be voted on as an allocation of staff effort.
Can I get a friendly amendment to strike July 7th and replace it with September 8th?
Well,
Yeah.
Dick will offer that amendment, so we'll replace July 7th with September 8th. Dick?
You want me to talk?
Or who's in the queue?
No, I will say that I think some kind of a flow chart showing where the various inflection points are, where the various decisions have to be made, would be very helpful, because it's gotten extremely complicated with all the various organizations that have a finger in this pie. And it's difficult to figure out where people have an opportunity to comment and where we're going to get information. And yes, we can't put it on a calendar. That was something we discussed last time this came up, and we agreed that it would be a flow chart, not a timeline. So I am very happy to suggest that we push the date back to September 8th and give the staff time to, because there's a lot of work in it. That is agreed.
Bill, do you accept that?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
She just did that.
Just covering everything. Any further discussion on the, Jenny?
yeah. My only concern about September 8th is, again, what I said before, that we, the board, and the public will not have missed an important deadline where CA staff are talking with other organizations or making decisions or anything in July, in August, and by the time we get that flow chart and see, oh, by the way, back there was when one of the major decisions was made, too late. That is my concern and fear. So I am trusting that the September 8th date being set guarantees that what I am concerned about and others are concerned about will not occur, and that the public and the board will have ample opportunity to have input into what is happening in our community and our open space. And if I can be assured of that September 8th date, that will work, unless it says a decision will be made on September 9th or something like that. But that's what I think is only fair in terms of trust with each other.
Anyway, it's a friendly amendment, so we don't need to actually vote on it.
Well, yeah, but is that date realistic is what I'm asking. Nothing will happen. I'm not getting an answer, Eric. I just would like an
She
answer.
told us.
Yeah, she told us.
What?
She told us.
said
September 8th.
September 8th.
No,
Yeah.
I know, but you heard that we will have input. I have not heard that, or
We don't need input. We just need a flow chart.
We need a flow chart. Any further discussion on this?
Janet has had her hand up for a while.
Oh, sorry. Janet, I can barely see these hand
I'm
icons.
satisfied with this September date. I would just like, again, to address the broader issue here and ask Eric that you will help guide the board in terms of what the expectations around subcommittees are, and so that moving forward, we don't spin our wheels not accomplishing what they set out to do.
Thank you. Duly noted.
Yeah, I've got a question about this. Come on the board. We had 2 weeks where we did nothing, and I think training is really important. You know, knowing the process, and I've tried to get the process and go through the correct. I've asked many questions, making sure I do the right thing. And I think any other year a board is brought on, those 2 weeks should be used to train people, to make sure when they get, so they know the process and what's going on. And I think it's been, with Eric as well, I mean, it's a hard job to come on the board, and you need to have a partnership, and it needs to be really work together. You need to be guided. That's what you're supposed to do in an organisation. You don't just throw people in the deep end. And you pick up the phone and just say, look, you're not doing the right thing. There's so many ways you can communicate. So I just want to make sure that's clear. I want to do the process. I want to have meaningful input, and I want it to work. This is a very desperate situation. There's an organisation, WSSI, has got 11 pages of documents. They did not get correct for MDE. That's a poor testimony, and we're afraid that if this goes through this process without it, we will not be able to give the input we need to give at the right time, and the public give an input. So I hope, as Ginny says, that we will get the right time to give input on this project.
Alan?
I'd just like to ask Ginny and Brian's question directly. Lakey, are you or the staff aware of anything that's going to happen between now and mid-September that will materially move this process along or affect this process, such that us having a timeline, or not timeline, but a flow chart at that point would put us behind an event?
You want me to answer that?
Yes, please.
There is nothing that I'm aware of that the team notified me of. And I do have to just state that it is highly concerning to me that multiple board members are openly stating that you think that you have fears and concerns that the staff is going to do something, and I guess in the improper interest of CA, because that is unfounded. That is just utterly unfounded.
Was the concerns that staff was going to do something, or was the concerns that the process was something in the process that was going to happen that we're not aware of?
That staff would make decisions, so I do believe that means staff.
Well,
I think I would, just to finish my statement, I think there are legitimate concerns about trust between the board and the staff. And I don't think anybody believes that the staff would do anything not in the best interest of CA. I just think that there's some difference and question of difference between what we think is in the best interest of CA, and that's part of what needs to be ironed out through increased communication and the retreat and that sort of thing.
So what I heard in this discussion was the concern that there might be some item in the actual stream restoration process that occurs between now and September 8th, or even just a little bit after it, that we wouldn't be aware of because this report would come out September 8th.
Right.
And so I think the concern is that, is there a decision point in the process that happens sooner than September 8th that we wouldn't be able to react to? I believe that was the concern of the board.
And I said no.
And you said no,
Okay,
which is
thank
fine.
you.
But I just want to clarify the concern, not
Thank
that
you.
we're disagreeing. Dick?
Yeah, it wasn't that the board thought you were going to pull something on us. It's just that we thought that things could happen, where the staff would have to make some decisions between now and then. And you confirmed that was not a problem, and I'm accepting that. I'd like to call the question.
Okay, quick,
Yeah.
and then we'll call.
Yeah, just a quick comment. Without the flow chart, I don't know who's the responsible party for getting input and having a say in this. Is it our staff? Is it WSSI, whatever it is, their staff? Is it somebody else? That's why I think the flow chart is so important. So without that, my concern is we don't know who, when timing and who the decision makers are. That's all I'm asking for, and that we'd be assured it's not going to happen. And like you just assured us, nothing's going to happen before mid-September, if I understood what you just said. Thank you. That's all I was asking
I'm
for.
going to call the question. Dick?
Yeah.
I forgot what the
We're voting on the flow chart for September 8th.
yes, and yeah.
Yeah, it's just yes, no. Brian?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes. Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
I'm a yes. The motion passes 8-0. That brings us to board discussion. We have the financial reports for FY22 audit financials and the FY22 fourth quarter financial reports.
Okay, so I first wanted to say, because the vice chair of the audit committee is Andy Stack, and he is not here this evening. He's on vacation. Both Bill Santos and Kevin Fitzgerald are members of the audit committee, and I know Eric and Dick were both in attendance, and just wanted to state that we had an audit committee meeting on July 20th. I also wanted to make sure that everyone, both on the board as well as anyone that watches this, is aware that on the CA website, we have a web page for each committee, and the audit committee is recorded and materials are posted there, and we have a much more detailed discussion during the audit committee of the financials. And then I wanted to provide quick context that the external auditors were present for that meeting, and they are Clifton, Larson, and Allen. We had a very positive outcome. We had an unqualified opinion, which is the highest mark you can get, though it sounds very not exciting. I always say, can't we have a gold star or something? Unqualified opinion does not sound, as outstanding as it is. No material findings. They had very nice things to say about working with both our finance team and our audit team. And the staff did receive congratulations by the audit committee chair for such stellar results. In addition, we are going to touch on the fourth quarter financial report, and I just wanted to provide the broad strokes that we beat budget by approximately $10 million. We did that while increasing services and programs to both residents and members, repaying team members that had borne the biggest sacrifice during COVID by working for reduced pay, and were able to add to our cash reserves and still get those results. This evening, I'm going to ask Lynn Schwartz, our Director of Finance, to provide a high-level view, but the detailed information is included in this evening's packet. So, Lynn?
Thank you, Lakey. I would like to just try to follow the pattern that Susan normally follows in reviewing the financial information. Since it was the fourth quarter, we have the audited financial statements, which I'll touch on first, that are in your packet. And
Can we get a microphone closer to Lynn?
I'm sorry?
Can we get a microphone closer to you?
Okay, Lynn, I think these side chairs are live.
How's that?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. And I have a louder voice than Susan does, so everybody should be able to hear.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, starting with the audited financial statements. As Lakey said, we did receive a clean opinion, an unqualified opinion, unmodified opinion from the auditors. You will notice, if you really look at the detail, that the opinion is a little bit different this year because there were some new auditing standards that the auditors had to comply with in terms of issuing their opinion. So it's a little bit longer, a little bit different than it normally is, but nevertheless, it is the best type of opinion that we can receive. So I think that the finance and accounting team did a really good job this year with the help of every other team in the organization, because the financial results are the results of everything that goes on and not just an accounting function. So if we start with the balance sheet, which is on page 3, the statement of financial position. Just a couple of highlights. I'm only going to hit the highlights, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about specific line items. I did want to point out at the very top that we were able to increase the cash and the emergency cash reserves over last year, largely because of an increase in annual charge revenue, $4.3 million in the employee retention tax credits that we applied for and received through the CARES Act, and about almost $900,000 of school-age services grants through the county, state money through the county that we received for school-age services. So some programs that we kept our ears to the ground and would not have received that money if we hadn't have been proactive in applying for it and making sure that the donors knew that we were eligible and deserving of that money. So the cash balances ended, the cash flow was very good for the year. Nothing else really noteworthy on the statement of financial position. We continue to pay down our debt. We have 2 term loans, and most of you know we've had one since just the new one since 2014, and the newest one just during the pandemic, when we decided to take advantage of the lower interest rates and lock in some term debt, less than 3%, which is a really favorable rate, and we're glad to have it now that we're looking at the rates starting to climb back up. So if there's no questions on the statement of financial position, page 4 is the statement of activities.
Lynn, excuse me, if I could just, I'm just thinking about the future. We got this extra grants and so on. I'm assuming those aren't going to be yearly things. Is that going to cause us to be behind anything moving forward?
No, it actually created the excess over the budget expectation that we enjoyed this in FY22. It didn't enable us to meet the budget or the cash forecast. It enabled us to exceed them.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Page 4, statement of activities. As you can see right at the top, the annual charge revenue did exceed the prior year. just by about $1.3 million, and it also exceeded our budget expectation because we had been cautious in forecasting some abatement activity that did not come to fruition with the commercial annual charge revenue. Increases in community programs and services, great membership, fees activity, big increases over FY21 because of the COVID situation, obviously. And therein is also reflected the pools being open again in FY22, as well as the school age services tuition and enrollment income that we hadn't had prior. The interest income other line, that big $4 million jump, that is where the the employee retention tax credit is reflected. And then the loss on Haven closure was the charge that we took last year to try to write off all of the costs related to the Haven closing in FY21. And now, as we continue to incur expenses related to that facility, we charge them against that reserve rather than running them through our current year costs. Great expense control across the board in terms of all personnel expenses. There was higher repairs and maintenance expenses this year due to the fact that so many things had been deferred during the pandemic, in an abundance of caution to just protect the cash flow and do only what was really necessary with repairs and maintenance and supplies and everything along that order. Community operations got back to a more robust activity, obviously this year with the landscaping and taking care of the pathways, not that they were neglected by any means during the pandemic. I think we're very proud of the way everything was maintained, but again, we did get back to some repair and maintenance and just normal activity that had been postponed during the pandemic.
Lynn?
Yes.
Question.
Sure.
Back up at the top, the community service programs and services 22.6. Give or take, I don't need an exact number, wonderfully higher than 2021, which was sort of deep in the pandemic. How does that compare to what we would think of as a normal year?
Well, normal, I guess, would have been like 19.
19, yeah. I mean, just ballpark, are we still climbing?
It's number one, it's hard to compare that number to prior years because it now represents a new community programs and services unit that includes what used to be called community services, like the school age services and the camps and the arts center. Lakefront activities were all in a separate department up until just really this past year when we reorganized and created community services and programs and community ops. So you'd have to go back and sort of add those two together to get a reasonable comparison to this revenue number.
What's your sense? And again, I'm not asking for a fine-tuned, accurate to the dollar number, but are we still climbing to get back to where we were with those things, or are we?
Yes, yes, we're definitely still climbing in membership. Tuition for school age services was not at full capacity this past year that we had enjoyed before, not just due to some of the restrictions, but because of our inability to find staffing. Complete staffing for some of the locations has been such a challenge, the employment market. So everything really, with the possible exception of golf fees, is still climbing.
Great, thank you.
If there aren't any more questions about the audited statements, we can jump into the book, which I think we're a little bit more familiar with, at least those who have been through the book before. And if you go to page 13, just the high level, it gives a little bit more detail in terms of comparisons to the prior year and comparisons to budget for FY22. As far as total income goes, we ended FY22 15% ahead of budget. That does include, the income does include the $4.3 million ETC tax credit. The income was 34% ahead of last year. So it was just a very favorable year in terms of income and over budget because, Alan, as you said, some of these favorable grants that we received during the fiscal year, but also because annual charge was higher than expectation, fees income was higher than expectation, rental income was higher than expectation, and membership revenue was higher than expectation in terms of the budget. So even absent those unexpected income items, it was a very good year in terms of the income against what we had budgeted. In the expense area, if you look at the first line, the personnel expenses, which is our most significant expense every year, it was above budget by design because we used slightly over $1 million of the retention tax credit to as a retention bonus to all of the team members who were with us in the fourth quarter. That was very well received in terms of retention and an incentive to and well deserved, I would add, by the team. We also, as Lakey mentioned briefly earlier, paid during the year, paid back folks who had worked for less than their full rate of pay during the pandemic, and we were able to pay them back to their full rate of pay, what they would have been paid, which we were very happy to be able to do because of the favorable cash flow. So that's really the only reason that the personnel costs ended up above budget. Fees, I'd like to point out that fees were above budget. We've talked about this before. We had interim leadership in IT. We had some interim and advisory resources in the general counsel's office during the year. We had legal fees, and we had, this is also the line item that captures some of the community operations outdoor work that is performed by the landscaping contractors, the tree people, et cetera. So that's what's on that line. Are there any questions about the organizational P&L or anything else that I've covered?
Any questions from the board? I see no questions.
Okay. And we can go on quickly to the dashboards.
Sure. Next item is the dashboard, 7B.
The dashboards are simply some metrics that we look at to make sure that we're in line with where we should be in terms of our debt to equity ratios and cash flow requirements and productivity ratios, accounts receivable, write-offs, and things like that. So I think the charts, the lead page gives sort of a brief definition or purpose of each dashboard chart, and then the charts are a picture version of the trends in terms of the various metrics that we use to determine whether we're heading where we think we should in terms of some key financial metrics for the organization. Nothing really unexpected here. I think if you look at the, we've had very low membership, bad debt, write-off activity, very high collection percentages on our membership activity. There was some deterioration in that last year because of the pandemic. A lot of people froze their memberships, et cetera, but that's all much better than it had been. We met our cash flow, net assets to debt service, and liabilities to total assets exceeded all of those ratios significantly. And then we show depreciation and repairs and maintenance as a % of revenue for the various facilities, just so for comparative purposes more than anything else, to see what we spend at the various facilities.
Lynn, metric 2, people productivity.
Yes.
I'm not sure how to interpret that. It looks like it's gone down 50% in the last year, so I'm not sure how to interpret that.
It's true because we had to, we cut back in FY21. We had furloughs, we had some work share programs, so the productivity in last year was higher. We cut back to a bare bones staff in some respects, and then we tried to build the staff this year in line with the revenue, keep it in line with the revenue growth and the revenue expectations. So the quarterly drop in Q4 is largely due to those incentives that we paid.
Well, but it also went down in Q4, between Q4 of 21 and Q1 of 22 and Q2 of 22. I'm just not sure how to read that. If there was a number you could pick that you'd like that to stabilize at, what would that, what's an ideal, like when we go to the doctor and they do a blood test, they give you a little range. This is what we'd like to keep it between. What would we like to keep that number between?
I think we've always ranged in the 80 to 90, 95% range. It fluctuates. Our business is somewhat seasonal, and so it does tend to fluctuate quarterly. We have to staff up for the pools significantly in the summer, and we don't, those pool memberships are paid over 12 months. So there's some other considerations besides just saying, where it should be. Ours would be a seasonal metric, I'm sure.
Okay. Thank you. That helps me know what I'm looking at. Thank you.
Sure. Dan, did you want to talk about the Clare Bridge?
I can just, is this mic picking me up? This one's not.
Not.
Can everybody hear Dan online?
Nope.
Try the side mics are probably the better option.
So I'll just say a couple things about the dashboard. The first is, remember, the survey was from April. This survey, when we do that at the year end, it's always so delayed. We're actually calculating this quarter survey now. So it's hard to be historical. And there's no comparisons because the previous survey was the well-being survey and they don't match up. But the data has held pretty steady. The team has been doing a really good job with the members. The Net Promoter Score, 43.7 versus 44.8. Sentiment, 0.34 versus 0.3. Effort, a negative 1.17 versus negative 1.28. So they've all been pretty consistent. The only one that hasn't been consistent, as you can see, that big fat -6 in golf. And that was the combined work of staff and the Golf Advisory Committee. Last year, we heard a lot from the members about the inability to get to tee times because we're so busy. And the members came forward and we recruited some members of the Golf Advisory Committee and worked all winter. I really appreciate the effort that the Golf Advisory Committee members put into it, and redid all the policies and procedures. And it was a little bit of be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. The members wanted me to fix that guy getting a tee time, not me. Don't change what I'm doing. But that's all kind of settled out, and everybody's been really happy this summer with their ability to get a tee time, so it's been really good. And then the only other thing that I'll point out quickly is that we continue to collect additional demographic information as people get used to it. I'm encouraged with each survey to see a little bit more additional feedback other than the prefer not to answer or the normal male or female or age. So hopefully soon we'll be able to collect enough data to really become actionable, but we're getting some small insights from that, but right now the N is still really low.
And going back to golf, I know you know this, but just to put into the public record, we got a nice, or you got a nice kudos from the senior golf folks about how the restaurant there is meeting their needs. And I don't know what your role in that was, but that is a headache that seems to have at least ameliorated. I appreciate that.
It's a constant work in progress, but yes, we had a very good meeting and everybody was on board with resolving all the issues. And some of it, as we talk about, was communication. And just sometimes getting everybody in the same room and talking it out works.
Any further questions for Dan? Any further questions, Dick?
Yeah, at the audit committee meeting, you guys got glowing reports.
Thank you.
And I was very impressed, particularly coming from an audit firm, since they're at their end of their contract, so they didn't have any reason to say nice things. But they were really pleased with the cooperation they got and with the results they saw. So,
You're welcome.
Any further questions or comments? Thank you. Thank you for the report. Next, we have item 7C, budget board strategy. So this is basically an open agenda item for the board to discuss any budget strategy concerns or ideas they might have. So I will open up for discussion. Is there anything that you want to see in the budget, or is there anything that you're concerned with about the budget, or anything else budget related? Any questions or comments?
This is Alan. I don't know where it fits in the process, but I would like us to as a criteria of some sort, I don't know if it's a firm criteria or just a keep in mind criteria, what things we think ought to be paid for by everybody in Columbia, as it were, and what things we think should be paid for by the users of that service. And at least I'll be keeping that in mind as I think through the budget and what gets allocated for what. That's something that's sort of implied in what we do, but it's often not been really robustly talked about.
So just to clarify, when you mean everyone, you mean the lien holders or everyone?
Right. What gets paid by assessment dollars and what gets paid by user fees, basically.
That's a good topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Any other topics that you'd want to see in the budget discussions? Ryan?
I'd like to see bring back the tot lot policies and the funding for the tot lot programs, review that.
Cool. Any other questions or comments or wants in the budget? Seeing none, that brings us to item D, pre-filed state and county legislation. Is there any pre-filed legislation that we need to be aware of, Wes? Nope. That brings us to questions only. Anybody have any questions on the president's report, the IAT report, or the board agenda topics log?
I have one on the
Jenny.
president's report. Actually, Lakey, I don't know if this is more of a question for Dennis, but on page 2 of 4, down in the middle, bamboo removal. I'm just interested, this is a problem occurring all over, and this is nothing new. It's been going on for years. But how costly is it? You just don't go in once and remove it and that's it, right? You got to keep coming back. So how costly is it? And have you given any consideration, or CA given any consideration, to talking with the village boards and having the architectural guidelines changed in the village, which would say you can't plant bamboo? Not that everybody's doing it, but some people are, and then it spreads. You know what, yeah.
If I could just say, so I met with my team today on creating an invasive species management plan. And it is, so Fairfax County has one. It is 60 pages. And so we're going to be somewhere between 5 pages and 60, but we're working on that right now. And what I'd ask, if you could be patient and give us some time into the fall, we can make that presentation or present that or distribute that. Mm-hmm. But it is not a minor lift for our team. And as I sat and listened and walked through it today, just to lay out the full plan and scope, and there's an XY graph, and the ones that are challenging and not possible to eradicate, the ones that are challenging but we can address, how we address them, what are the opportunities to address them, where are they, how many are there, how much they cost. Bamboo, it's not you get the woods harvester in there. I could go on a long time, but I would ask you to wait and let me put something more fulsome together.
And to follow up on that, how much of this is actually we need to do like resident education as far as educating our residents as what's invasive and what is native, and being able to help residents make good decisions when they come for plantings and planting in their
There's some
yards.
of that. What's interesting is some of the non-native invasive plants you can buy at plant stores. So it's not just, and you're shaking, you know that.
Yeah.
And so it's not just, it'd be great if we could educate residents and educate Home Depot and all the different nurseries that are out there. But there is some of that. But if you have a garden at your house, and that's not our biggest problem, and there are some natural barriers in the open space and pathways that prevent stuff from jumping around. Something like the, if you had that Maryland Patuxent Reserve, it's a couple thousand acres, but it's all together. So they don't have those natural barriers like we do. Our stuff is kind of chopped up a little bit. So there are some advantages, and certainly a single household probably isn't our biggest problem. I'd like to educate them. But there are so many other places to start.
Thanks. Any further questions?
Just one question.
Right.
So the plan is how you're going to react, not just to residents, but to your open space, the 1,400 acres. How
Yes.
you're going to eradicate.
So it's what's out there, what we can address, what we should address, and because there are something like 30 or 40 that we can name. And Japanese stiltgrass, you guys were out there.
Yeah.
That's probably not one that we're going to be able to address. Right. But there are others, and Archangel, and if John was here, he would know the scientific name for each of these. The one that smells like dead fish that we saw when we were out in Long Beach. That one hasn't become pervasive in the open space, and so that one we can get ahead of. Some, though, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to. Hopefully, hopefully the deer will change their diet. I don't know.
Retrain the deer.
Alan.
Yeah, Lakey, on the President's report under challenges, you refer to supply chain and inflation. I was wondering, I don't need a line-by-line type answer, but how would you characterize the impact on our activities and our budget of those two factors?
I mean, substantial and unpredictable. I can't. I mean, it really changes day to day. We've had things that are 6 times the cost. We've had percentage increases that are 50 and 70%. It's been on something as small as coffee cups and as significant as fleet vehicles. So I think the actual challenge is how significant and unpredictable in concert it is. And there's no real way for us to foresee. Obviously, our purchasing manager works as closely as we can with vendors, and our operations teams do the same. I think our revenue, or rather our expense to revenue management, has significantly helped us in being able to, I think, not be overage, but it also creates a lot of challenges with needing something when we need it. And that is when it's an unpredictable supply chain, we will order and we will be in an order and then be told months later that it is not available. The most recent example that's been going around is that we ordered a pickup truck in January of 2021, and we're told this month that it would not be manufactured. So we have been waiting all that time assuming we were getting a vehicle. And so not only are we not going to get it, but we're now out back in the market having to pay a higher cost and have another lead time.
Thank you. So what would a resident notice?
I don't think I can answer that without drilling really into the examples. As I mentioned, it's been as wide-ranging as disposable coffee cups. So depending on which facility, CA facility you're at, you may have noticed that, you may not. I mean, obviously, we do all we can to find another vendor source. I can't think of anything right now that would have a direct resident impact that I could give as an example.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know I was at the Aquatics Advisory Committee, and they were, Marty was talking about something as simple as trying to order lifeguard bathing suits, and he's ordering now for next summer.
Yeah.
Because last summer was so atrocious to receive. So thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing no further questions, proposed new topics. Any proposed new topics?
Yeah, just one.
Jenny?
And actually, I apologize if this did make it to the board agenda topics log. I didn't see it, but it may have by now. Just the encroachment policy that I asked for the last time, CA's encroachment policy be put on the board agenda. And some specific examples, for example, the one on Thunderhill Road and the stream. So I brought that up before. If it did get on the agenda, I apologize. But if it didn't, I'm going to give it another shot. Thanks.
Probably a topic for the next BOC.
Yeah, right.
Any other proposed new topics? Going once, going twice. That brings us to chair remarks. So we had actually a really good training session last week. I think as a board, it was a very, very helpful experience. We got to have some interesting discussions about where we want to see things going and what we think we can improve on. And certainly one of the main topics that came up several times during that training was the need for communication and improving communications, not just with the board, but also between the board and staff, between the board and the president. So certainly improving communications is certainly a key thing that we all should hope to improve upon. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Jenny moves. Can I get a second?
Second.
Jenny moves. Brian seconds. Any objections to adjourning? Seeing none, meeting is adjourned. That's 8:59.
You'll come back.